professionally, I mean, I would have loved to have been a jurist and remain a jurist, but you have to put food on the table. So you also indulge in enterprise, which I did. And I've been doing that for the last 53 odd years.
More than 5 decades. Oh,
That is, I mean, if you want to professionally define me, I am an entrepreneur of sorts, with a multinational exposure, whether it is Pakistan or Bangladesh or Malaysia or Switzerland or Britain.
you just kept every place together. Where have you been, where have you spent?
We still are doing exactly that. And I hope I can throw in the towel and let the next generation take over and move on. My sorrow in life has been how I have seen Pakistan being developed. And that is why my focus on the type of writing I do, like the recent book, which was published on the 29th of February this year, called The Current Chronicles,
Just before the pandemic.
right, is in fact a suggestive piece of literature for reforms in Pakistan. Because it's a factor of belief. I mean, that any economy, unless it is completely free from bureaucratic controls, will not rise. And now that we are discussing Japan, there is a huge lesson to learn from here. A very huge lesson to learn from here. I mean, first of all, I would like to thank Khurram here and Ad Pearls, the agency, and yourself, Mr. Sugar, for inviting my comments on the 20th anniversary of Pakistan-Japan Business Forum. You see, the bilateral relationship presents a dismal picture. We are importing about 1.5 billion odd from Japan, and we are exporting less than 160 million to Japan. So there is a huge trade imbalance. Now, when I did address an anniversary, the 65th anniversary of bilateral relations between the two countries, sometimes in 2017, I pointed out to a very, very respectable audience out there that the relationship between any two countries depends on balancing the balance of trade. You're importing in excess, you're not exporting enough, there's something wrong somewhere. And when you probe into what is wrong, you will realize that it is your own stringent laws that deter enterprise to act and move freely that has caused this imbalance. And Pakistan is a sad story for this imbalance, with a huge list of countries out of the 183, 184 odd countries on the planet. Whoever we deal with, there is a trade imbalance. And there is a trade imbalance because there is some intrinsic fault with us. We are a country which is rich in the region by all definitions of production. You take manpower, you've got one of the youngest in the world. You take natural resources, you are rich. You are richer than Iran, you are richer than Saudi Arabia, you are richer than any other country in the region. point of view of your population compared to your natural resources, your human resources. So why are we not making the mark? We are not making the mark because enterprise is arrested in the hands of politics. You go to a country, any developed country, go to America, for instance. And since we are discussing Japan, let's go to Japan. Post the Second World War, you see an absence of quality manpower, human resources. The total absence of natural resources.
They don't have much.
And the ground reality of being the only country that had been subjected to a nuclear detonation in Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
True, very true.
Totally destroyed, almost flattened out. Now this country rises, and in a period of about 20 years, comes to a position where they rub shoulders with the first world. Technological development, present. Export development is present. Industrialization policies are over. Bureaucratic controls are on the floor. And this is the lesson we need to learn. Then they had the advantage of the Meiji culture. The Meiji culture is an amazing culture because it denounces negativity. For instance, if you're sitting out there and I'm sitting here, I will never be caught as a Japanese to comment that you're sitting far away. On the contrary, I'll be saying you're not sitting close enough. Now that is the positivity in the Meiji culture, which that nation leaned on, thrived, and allowed the population to invest with their two hands into entrepreneurship, industrialization, and there were no restrictions whatsoever. Their security needs were consigned out to the aggressor. And they realized, because of their monarch at that time, they realized that unless we have industrial autarky and strength and technological development, we will not turn the corner. So there was total freedom, and that freedom remains.
So the question arises, what gave them that freedom?
You see, we are sitting in Pakistan, which was part of the Indian subcontinent. And the Indian subcontinent was colonized. When you have a colonized territory, what happens is that the colonizer makes the institution of the states or elevates the institution of the states to be rulers and the population to be servants. In an independent state, the story is different. The people are rulers, the institution of the states are servants. After 1947, we did not get that benefit. We are still following the colonial colonial laws of 1866 indoctrinated by Macaulay. And therefore, the institutions of the state in Pakistan, be it the judiciary, the army, the civil bureaucracy, or the parliament, they control,
They're on top of our heads.
they are controlling this economy, and our budget is a very, very clear, presents a very clear financial picture.
Agreed.
All the taxes that we collect, all the borrowing we are doing, 82% is being spent on these four institutions
True.
whose total strength from the president to a janitor in KMC is 2.6 million people. 18% is being assigned for expenses and development for 220 million people, which is the population.
True.
And that 18% is also being routed through the same bureaucracy. And that is primarily the difference between Japan and Pakistan. Please, Shahid, get him a glass of water. Republic of Pakistan. Now, Islam does not recognize nation states. We believe in the concept of an ummah. That means commonality, economic, commonwealth, defense collaboration, commonality in the medium of exchange or money. And this did not happen because the colonizers wanted to carve the world into nation states for easier management. And we are a nation state. Now, how we contest that is a subject totally apart. But if you look into the history of nation states, only those nation states have made a mark, like Japan, like Germany, like Singapore, who have done two basic things. Those two basic things are, number one, they have identified a destination, an economic destination, towards which the entire country has to move. We don't have that. The other thing they did was the commonality of law. There is no privileged class amongst the people. What is good for the goose is good for the ganders. What is good for you is good for me. We all are governed. So there is a social destination as well.
So more than economics, right? It's more about, the liberation of the whole law.
Changing of the whole. Yes. Yes.
That's the most basic point in our life. So how we will turn up and end up doing that?
The Constitution of Pakistan, as is in place right now, has clauses that make it incumbent upon any government in office to identify an economic destination, to identify the social destination or the social canvas on the basis of which laws have to be
Implemented, or which are laws.
legislated and then promulgated. I've just given you a figure of 82% that these people are, which is being spent on these people. And from 1947 to date, if you take a record of the laws that have been legislated by legislative assemblies, you will be appalled that the basic laws that enable governance have not been touched. They have always ruled on perks, they have ruled on small issues of getting economic benefits. आज duty कम कर दो, कल duty बढ़ा दो. That's all. Fundamental changes in the law have not taken place. Why? because the entire country has become a profit center for the people sitting in the assemblies, for the institutions.
For the 82% in short.
2.6 million people need to make money at the cost of 220 million people. In Japan, it's a different story. Although you have monarchy, but that monarchy is more of a regulator than anything else. And he's ensuring that the people rule and the institutions serve. Then there is clear legislation on standards. For instance, if you take the Quran, and out of the 6,666 odd ayats, I'll quote an ayat which has been oft repeated. Go for the best, go for nothing but the best. It's a pointer for establishing and invoking standards. Here, the standards are determined on the whims of a bureaucrat, whether they are nameplates outside his room, they are marking on the roads, there are street lights, there's a firefighting regime, there is a regime for managing public hospitals, schools, curriculums, whims of various bureaucrats. No laws on the determination of standards, because has to be based on research, have been promulgated, and therefore they're not invoked. So in effect, unless you give direction to this country, you will never see a tangible change. And that direction I do not see coming from people who are making money out of us, from us the people. This 2.6 million people will never make changes. We can't depend on them to make the changes because they're making money out of it. Whether they are politicians, whether it's the army, the judiciary, the civil bureaucracy, they're all making money. And the evidence is that your formal economy and what you call the informal economy or the black economy is 12 times the size of the formal economy.
Maybe more than that.
I'm talking about official statistics.
Agreed. Maybe more than that.
Those are the results. That is evidence. So, the role of Pakistan-Japan Business Forum, in my humble submission and opinion, is to replicate the method on the basis of which enterprise is being addressed in Japan, and they need to fight for the freedom of enterprise from bureaucratic controls. That's it.
Very nice. Well,
I went through the laundry list of protocols which exist from 1954 down to the most recent one between Pakistan and Japan. And there's a whole laundry list of these protocols. They've helped us with floods, they've helped us at the time of the earthquake, they've helped us in archiving our old documents, they've helped us in the retention of our archaeological sites in Mohenjo-daro, in Texila. They've helped us with our educational institutions and with polytechnical education. And while this has been a one-sided love story, we, apart from standing up for them at the United Nations in 1951, did not do very much for them. We are talking of culture, we are talking of cultural exchanges. When Zardari went to Japan, and then prior to him, Musharraf went to Japan, All they signed were cultural protocols. There are cultural troops who will go from here, dance and sing there and come back. That is insignificant in this day and age, because what we need to get from them, if we have to get from them, is their knowledge, their methods for technological achievements in exchange of the natural resources we are rich with, which we can give to them. Whether it is copper, whether it is iron ore, whether it is anything else, even coal. And this is what should be the focus. This is what we should strive for. This is where the pathetic part is that bilateral relationship in Pakistan is not overviewed from the perspective of economics. It is more of politics.
Just to add Japan on this side.
I mean, these political milestones will get you nowhere. They are meaningless. You will exist. Nobody is coming to sink you into the Arabian Sea. You have 220 million people. The Jews shout about something called the Holocaust. In the Holocaust, 220 million people didn't get killed. So there's no power on this earth which is going to sink 220 million people or destroy them. We have to wake up. We have to look into economic objectives. The two things which I have defined: the destination, the economic destination, A, the social destination, that means the establishment of material justice, social justice, with equality. What is good for you is good for me. Today you have protective laws for these institutions.
Agreed.
You can't criticize the army. True. It is subversion. You can't criticize the bureaucracy, the civil bureaucracy, sedition. You can't criticize the judiciary, contempt. And the parliamentarians, my God, you try and criticize them, they'll bump you off.
Without it. Because these all laws are going to protect
So when
them.
you ask me this question, I mean, when you say that, how will we change? We, the people, will have to rise to change this. If we are expecting the bureaucracy or the parliamentarians or anybody among the 2.6 million people to cause this change, it's not happening. It is simple. You're making a lot of money. I come to your house and I tell you, Mr. Shuja, stop making money, share it with me.
Obviously.
Get out.
True.
So, this is what is the entire big picture. I think another word on bilateral relationships and the protocols which are on the anvil between Pakistan and Japan. I had made this request in 2017, and I would like to use your platform once again to make this request. Perhaps for the attention of the Japanese government more so than Pakistan, that we need polytechnical institutes here. And if they can help us with that, we have a lot of labor force, very young labor force available in the country. And if they get a discipline on the basis of which they can earn, it will further the goals for entrepreneurial objectives and development in the country. That is about it.
per my knowledge, just a small one. I don't know how they're going to are being used and stuff like that. They have supported Pakistani government in different eras to just develop this polytechnical development in Pakistan. But unfortunately, right, in last decade, almost like 56% of those investments which the Japanese government has put in Pakistan for the development of these polytechnical institutes have been went into ruins. Most of them.
It's a very unfortunate. I have some data with me, which I was looking into last night. Whatever they sent here for the floods, whatever they sent here for the earthquake, whatever they sent here for the development and establishment of polytechnical institutes in Pakistan was hardware which was squandered, misappropriated, sold in the market. I've even suggested to the Pakistan Army that as an institution which is, well, reasonably organized, they should take the initiative of establishing polytechnical institutes, because there is no other institution to do it right now. Political governments are not doing it. They are selling what you get by way of aid. Let them do it. But it is very, very crucial. And this is the lesson we learned from Japan. It's very, very crucial that if you empower the people with skills, not even with money, with skills, they ignite the generator of enterprise.
They'll rise up
They
one way
create
or
it.
the other. True.
I mean, I sometimes very fondly reflect on the history of that car manufacturer called Mazda. The first car they produced was from war junk. Tanks, aircrafts.
The salvage
Secret
came from there, right?
They found a lot of junk. They picked up the salvage from there, picked things out from there, assembled a car. Today, it's a big company. Okay. So if you empower the people with skills, they create their own world. And that is the biggest lesson to learn from countries like Japan. I mean, Singapore is also a great example. When you get marshland as a country, nothing. But they immediately identified an economic destination that we will be the biggest port and a free port. Their per capita income is almost at the top of the world.
So we could,
So the legacy, the factor of legacy, is a hidden desire within all of us. And at my age, I'm 70, at my age, that I am not devoid of this desire. And the desire now stems from the fact of my history. What did I see? And how can I make a change? How can I make a difference? That's why you see this book, or you see any form of writing, or you see any form of expression of thought. Now that thought may be found very acceptable by a handful of people, may be found repulsive by yet another set of people. But that is something which, to me, is like an obligation you have towards the society you were born and brought up in, and you will die within. So, whether it's going to bring any satisfaction to me, I have no idea. I don't even know if somebody's going to read this book ever in my lifetime. I have Mr. Shehzad just sitting here, for instance, and he has done his majors in philosophy. There are many occasions when he brings or he quotes writers, philosophers, who have gone and who have become part of dust in history over several centuries. And somebody is reading them today. And somebody is drawing lessons from that today. Isn't that true for our Prophet? Isn't that true for the sages in Islam? They've said things 1500 years ago. Something may have registered at that time to some people. But it is the strength of what they said or did that we are still drawing lessons out of today. And it was based on either divine guidance or their experiences. Now, I am no messenger of God. I am an ordinary human being. I am an ordinary mortal. So what do I have as an asset base is my experience, my exposure. I went here, I went there, I got a bloody nose here, I got somebody box my ears there. And this is how I learned. That if somebody picks up a gun at you, you should run. So this is what I put here. And this is what I have experienced. And this is what I feel is the right course.
I just got to know that Shah told me that this is your 6th book.
Ji.
So, 5th, okay. My bad. 5th book. What was the first one and what intrigued you of writing that?
Well, I told you about the accident of marriage.
Agreed.
Alright? So, in the early parts of my married life, I had ample time to myself to mourn the change of freedom. So I started writing a journal. And that journal was my views on a variety of subjects that I was experiencing, seeing, understanding. That was about 35 years ago, 40 years ago, maybe, I don't know. And the book was called The First Feelers. And then I came to a stage where I felt that because having done Islamic jurisprudence and economics in tandem, I felt that we are absolutely off the mark in the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. So I wrote another book, and that is called A Rendezvous with Destiny, because I couldn't change it. So seemingly that what I was suffering was my destiny, or destiny to be, or destiny as was.
And what time was that?
Well, I launched the book from the Jung platform in 1994, I think.
All right. Way after the first book. Okay. I'm just trying to just understand the whole time era. Right?
Then happened the Gulf War. And the Western media was drumming up a notion that Islam does not have a message for economics, and which I did not find very acceptable. So I wrote my 3rd book called The Decisive Age, and that was an economic recipe as is presented, from my understanding, in Islam. The 4th book was about religion, because I was disgusted with the mullahs in any sect. I don't think there is a place for the mullahs in Islam, whether it is a Sunni or a Shia or anything else. So I wrote a book called What is this thing called Religion, for God's sake? That's the title of the book. It explains the big canvas of Islam and the effects of the message of Islam. And it is based on one ayat of the Quran which defines revolution, and it says the deliverance of a message followed by blood, which is what happened. The clergy has no place in Islam. It is a recent borrowing from Christianity, perhaps, and it is a creation of monarchs. It has nothing to do with the clean message which was presented to us by Prophet of Allah, the last Prophet, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The fifth book, of course, is here, Current Chronicles, and it is in two parts. The first part comprises of a lot of essays or articles which were published in Pakistan Observer. And the second part contains the thesis which I managed to write on the reforms package for Pakistan, and I had it openly debated by different professionals in seminars which I organized and paid for, and I invited a host of retired judges in Karachi to be the jury. So that is a document which can probably identify for the country I love and I belong to the way forward. And in addition to this, I have also published very recently, a few days ago, in fact, a small booklet based on about 35-40 pages with the title of the socio-economic destination for Pakistan. Because these are the two things I believe which are important for any nation state to make a mark. You need to have a social destination, you need to have an economic destination, and without that, you're like a ship without a rudder. That is my response to your question.
Well taken, sir. Well taken. So, another thing. When did you really felt like not working in Pakistan? Because you have been working in different countries, right? And every country, if you say Bengal, right, Bangladesh is doing way much better than Pakistan right nowadays. They are the same kind. Initially, I was just wanted to say about this, right? East Pakistan did much better than West Pakistan after getting separated. But it's still, we lost a part. But they are well off with others. Don't you agree with that?
Economically, yes, they are better off. Politically, they are a colony of India. And it's unfortunate because all my childhood friends are in the corridors of power there. So I know firsthand the ground realities out there. And they're not happy. These ground realities are not a happy story to write about. And every time I reflect on it, I'm saddened because we brought this upon ourselves to part with it. There's nothing different about a Bengali and the people here. They're as human as we are.
True.
And they were as patriotic in 1965 when the war took place between India and Pakistan. That they were marching in paddy fields with bamboo sticks as makeshift rifles in support of the Islamic Republic of Pakistan. In my own family, my grandparents and my parents migrated to East Pakistan with that great emotion that we are now going on to a land which belongs, a land of purity, a land where there will be laws, there will be an Islamic way of life. In fact, my grandparents refused to ever go back to even visit India. And they died there. My grandfather is buried in Chittagong, in East Pakistan. My grandmother is buried here in Karachi. So people who came with that fervor as a Mussalman of the Indian subcontinent have had a very rough time in Pakistan because of the non-equality of the law. It is not evenly handled. Institutions cannot be allowed to rule a country. They are there to serve the country and they must always remain confined to that particular limitation. You can mock the Limitation Act in Pakistan, which points towards that, but is never followed. It kills me from within when I have to appear before a bureaucrat and say, Sahab, Salaam Alaikum, give me some, do my job. No, he's a servant, he's getting paid by our taxes. He better do his job. And I must have the power that if he fails to do the job without bribes, I should be able to kick him out. Whether he's a general or a judge or a federal secretary, it doesn't make a damn difference. Then you have assemblies. In Sweden, the parliamentarians don't get a salary. They're supposed to come in public transport. They're supposed to make laws. Here, you refer to your assembly as August Assembly. What is so august about an assembly? They're doing a job of legislation. And that should be done based on research. And they're being paid for it. And you can't touch a parliamentarian. He's like a messenger of Allah. This is totally nonsensical. So, to answer your question specifically, when did I feel that I cannot work here? It was 2010. I just got tired, fed up. I've lost more money on initiatives or entrepreneurial initiatives in Pakistan than anybody can dream of. It goes into millions of dollars. I don't do business with the government of Pakistan. I don't want to do business with the government of Pakistan. I don't believe in them, and I don't want to give bribes to anybody. I've lost a lot. And frankly, at my age, if I think I can achieve even 1% to cause a change here, it's a big achievement. Money is not a criteria. Money has never been a criteria. In entrepreneurship, money is not the criteria.
So that's the loveliest thing you just said.
Why? What does an entrepreneur do? He identifies a social need.
True.
What does my society need? He finds all the elements of production to be able to service that need.
True.
The difference between an entrepreneur and a businessman is simple. The entrepreneur conceives what a social environment needs. A businessman does the supply of demand. That's
So
all.
always thinks of how he can make money.
That's it. That's what it is.
Very true, very true. It's never about money.
So, if you have people pushing things, leaning on the bureaucracy, lining somebody's pocket, it's not a business or an entrepreneur, enterprise-friendly economy. I'd be a very happy man to see in my lifetime something change. And may
Inshallah you would, sir. Inshallah. Just another question here. After your thesis, when you presented to every, you just got it debated and you just put a jury on that, right? To evaluate the whole situation. Did anybody got triggered by that and got to you and asked to just accept that system or something like that? At any time? People who start with the work.
I'll tell you the highs of this particular initiative of holding seminars.
Mhm.
Each seminar had cost me several millions. And the high point was that all the retired judges gave verdicts on the validity of my thesis after it was debated by professionals. So that's the high point. It's a big medal on my chest. I love it, and I hope the coming generations will take advantage of it. The low point was that we had planned on 23 seminars. We did a seminar, which was the debut seminar, and was followed by the social reform seminar, it was followed by the economic reform seminar, it was followed by the political reform seminar. We were coming to education, judiciary, and then the armed forces when I was invited for coffee by somebody from the armed forces and told, he wanted to know who's funding it. I said, I am. He says, why? Because I want to see a change. Nothing disrespectful, nothing threatening, but I think he conveyed the message to me. It is better that I dissuade from holding further seminars. At that particular point in time, the person heading my panel of jurists was Justice Sayyid Siddiqui, who had also been the Chief Justice of Pakistan. So I went to him and I told him that this is the type of coffee I've just had with somebody in uniform. And he absolutely backed off and he said, may he rest in peace. He's not with us anymore. He says, "Hey, stop it." So we stopped it. But we have got here in this book at least records of 4 or 5 seminars. That's good enough.
Sometimes the question remains the same. Who's doing it?
I'll tell you who's doing it. When you base an economy in the hands of people who are seeking an access to money to look after their perks, they will never look into the larger benefit of the country. Not in the last stint, but in the stint prior to that, in 1999, I was requested by Nawaz Sharif to head one of his task forces. And the task force was called the Prime Minister's Task Force for National Affairs and Donors Coordination. So I told Nawaz Sharif that, Mr. Prime Minister, I can handle one aspect, national affairs. Donors coordination I cannot, because I was never educated to be a beggar. I refused to go to donors. So I had to share the task force with Mir Sabir Shah. And I realized that everything that was being done by the government, all actions, all planning, all policy undertakings, was with one deity of worship in view. And that deity of worship in view were donors.
Rest of the Bible, rest of the
Doesn't
Bible
matter.
is just my situations. Mine.
If their focus were the people of Pakistan,
It would have been a different story.
we can outpace and outdevelop any country in the region. In fact, any country in Asia. You've got excellent manpower here. You've got excellent geniuses here. You've got rich. cultural backgrounds. But what have you converted the entire social order to be? You've based it now on theft, on lies, on something which is against merit. So where are we headed? And they're proud of it. Institutions are advertising their presence with taxpayers' money. We are the messiahs of your time. Hell no. It's my money. Why are you advertising your position? You're not supposed to be advertising your position. With my money? Why? That money should be spent on me, on my welfare, on my healthcare, on my education, on my roads, on my sewage, on my electrical supplies. You're spending that money on advertising your presence. I'm sorry, we've gone off the bank
Doesn't make sense.
from the subject of the Pakistan-Japan economic
The whole
forum.
point of you speaking out, you have, right, in the simplest way, it's not just one thing, right? We are learning a lot, I guess everybody is. We might be able to take out something out of this whole scenario. This is one, right? We can just take out and make another thing of yours, right? To precisely run it in a different kind of manner. So it's really not
They
necessarily
also
what
push it enough to send me to jail.
No.
Anyways.
Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it, because I'm very much, there were times when I just wanted to stop you at some places, but when you were talking freely, we should let a person speak. And this is what you're doing everywhere, right? So coming back, how do you see Pakistan and Japan's, not bilateral, just relationships between two countries in future?
You see, the first law of economics is that it is secular. And I often add a rider to this law for the benefit of my friends, that there are no permanent enemies and there are no permanent friends. Japan's love affair with Pakistan is based on their interest. Pakistan's love affair with Japan should be based on our interest, but it is not. So there is a major difference in your approach and attitude. Japan will keep helping Pakistan, keep assisting Pakistan, from what I can see, because of their interest in your geopolitical location, because of their interest in your natural resources, which can be had at a preferential cost, as is being taken by China. So what we are getting from Japan, by way of donation, by way of assistance, is not without a purpose. Like it is not without a purpose when we receive it from China, it's not without a purpose when we receive it from America or from anywhere else. And I really wish that Pakistan could define its economic destination so that when we are dealing on a bilateral platform with these countries, it is with a defined purpose. If they're giving us $100 worth in assistance, we should be able to give them $200 worth in assistance. We have the resources. We don't have direction. We don't have a plan of our own. So this is where I see Pakistan going with this relationship. Japan will continue to befriend you, and I hope that is good for them. We should befriend them to learn something from them.
And let's hope it's good for us as well.
I should hope so.
So, I would like to close this thing up with a brief message for Pakistan-Japan Business Forum from your side.
As I said earlier in my discourse with you, the Pakistan-Japan Business Forum needs to focus on exchange programs. That means, like we did with the Scandinavian countries, we had a Sukha barter. It's what's called Sukha. We would be better off if we have a barter arrangement with Japan where we can exchange value for value. Because as the statistics stand, we are looking at 1.5 billion plus in imports, 160 million in exports. Now to balance the balance of trade, the role Pakistan-Japan Business Forum can play is to push for a barter that will balance the balance of trade. And that will restore the health of bilateral relationship between Pakistan and Japan. And that is also our need. We just have functions, dinners and luncheons and some wild speeches to deliver nothing. We must go for barters. The Ministry of Commerce, the Ministry of Finance, the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the State Bank of Pakistan. These are the institutions that have to step forward and allow Pakistan-Japan Business Forum to structure a barter and freely implement it. It might surprise you that the State Bank of Pakistan does not promote barters without the permission of donors. But it is time that these forums, these sort of platforms, these sort of business associations have to drive their point home because it benefits Pakistan.
True. Very true.
That's my message. Thank you so much. As a parting comment for the Pakistan-Japan Business Forum, celebrating their 20th year of existence, I wish you prolonged existence and wish you progress with the hope that you will achieve the biggest task before any business community of any country, which is balancing the balance of trade. I wish you good luck and Godspeed.